A Long Walk to Water, Chapter 16. The stories so far. Naya's brother explains that the water will not continue to be brown, but will soon be fresh and clean. After extensive arrangements and a long trip, Selva arrives in America and meets his new family. Southern Sudan, 2009. After the excitement of seeing the first spray of water from the aquifer, the villagers went back to work. Several men gathered in front of Naya's house. They had tools with them, hoes and spades and scythes. Her father went out to meet them. The men walked together to a spot beyond the second big tree and began clearing the land. Naya watched them for a few moments. Her father saw her and waved. She put the plastic can down and ran over to him. "Papa, what are you doing?" "Clearing the land here, getting ready to build." "To build what?" Naya's father smiled. "Can you guess?" Rochester, New York, 1996 to 2003. Selva had been in Rochester for nearly a month and still had not seen a single dirt road. Every road was paved, and at times the cars whizzed by so fast he was amazed that anyone on foot could cross safely. His new father, Chris, told him that dirt roads did exist out in the countryside, but there were none in Selva's new neighborhood. All the buildings had electricity. There were white people everywhere. Snow fell from the sky for hours at a time and then stayed on the ground for days. Sometimes it would start to melt during the day, but before it all disappeared, more snow would fall again. Selva's new mother, Louise, told him it would probably be April, 3 more months before the snow went away completely. The first several weeks of Selva's new life were so bewildering that he was grateful for his studies. His lessons, especially learning English, gave him something to concentrate on, a way to block out the confusion for an hour or two at a time. His new family helped too. All of them were kind to him, patiently explaining the millions of things he had to learn. It had taken 4 days for Selva to travel from the Afo refugee camp to his new home in New York. There were times when he could hardly believe he was still on the same planet. Now that Selva was learning more than a few simple words, he found the English language quite confusing, like the letters O-U-G-H. Rough, though, fought, through, bow. The same letters were pronounced so many different ways. Or you had a word had to be changed depending on the sentence. You said chickens when you meant the living birds that walked and squawked and laid eggs, but it was chicken with no S when it was on your plate ready to be eaten. "We're having chicken for dinner." That was correct, even if you had cooked 100 chickens. Sometimes you wondered if you would ever be able to speak and read English well, but slowly, with hours of hard work over the months and years, his English improved. Selva had been in Rochester for more than 6 years now. He was going to college and had decided to study business. He had a vague idea that he would like to return to Sudan someday to help the people who lived there. Sometimes it seemed like an impossible idea. There was so much war and destruction, poverty, disease, and starvation. So many problems that had not been solved by governments or rich people or big aid organizations. What could he possibly do to help? Selva thought about this question a lot, but no answer came to him. One evening at the end of a long day of study, Selva sat down at the family computer and opened his email. He was surprised to see a message from a cousin of his, someone he barely knew. The cousin was working for a relief agency in Zimbabwe. Selva clicked open the message. His eyes read the words, but at first his brain could not comprehend them. United Nations Clinic, your father, stomach surgery. Selva read the words again and again. Then he jumped to his feet and ran through the house to find Chris and Louise. "My father!" he shouted. "They have found my father!" After several exchanges of emails, Selva learned that the cousin had not actually seen or spoken to his father. The clinic where his father was recovering was in a remote part of southern Sudan. There was no telephone or mail service, no way of communicating with the clinic. The clinic staff kept lists of all the patients they treated. These lists were submitted to the United Nations aid agencies. Selva's cousin worked for one of the agencies, and he had seen the name of Selva's father on a list. Selva immediately began planning to travel to Sudan. But with the war still raging, it was very difficult to make the arrangements. He had to get permits, fill out dozens of forms, and organize plane flights and a car transport in a region where there were no airports or roads. Selva and Chris and Louise as well spent hours on the phone to various agencies and offices. It took not days or weeks, but months before all the arrangements were made. And there was no way to get a message to the hospital. At times, Selva felt almost frantic at the delays and frustrations. What if my father leaves the hospital without telling anyone where he's going? What if I get there too late? I will never be able to find him again. At last, all the forms were filled out and all the paperwork was in order. Selva took a jet to New York City, another one to Amsterdam, and a third to Kampala in Uganda. In Kampala, it took him 2 days to get through customs and immigration so he could board a smaller plane to Juba in southern Sudan. Then, after nearly a week of exhausting travel, he rode in a jeep on dusty dirt roads deep into the bush. How familiar everything was, and yet how different. The unpaved roads, the scrubby bushes and trees, the huts roofed with sticks bound together, everything in the area was just as Selva remembered it, as if he had left only yesterday. At the same time, the memories of his life in Sudan were so distant. How could memories feel so close and so far away at the same time? After many hours of jolting and bumping along the roads in the jeep, Selva entered the shanty that served as a recovery room at the makeshift hospital. A white woman stood to greet him. "Hello," he said. "I'm looking for a patient named Mawian Dut Arik. Can you tell me if he is here?" Selva held his breath, waiting for her answer.